Hey everyone, me Kevin here. It seems these days we just can't get enough of the Federal Reserve, and the Federal Reserve just today on September 2nd released their Beige Book, and it's pretty dark beige this time. That is, there's not a lot of light in it. I read the entire report, and in this video I'm going to give you some quick takeaways from it and bottom lines related to this release. Remember, the Beige Book represents economic trends and conditions as of August 2020, and again, they just released that today on September 2nd. Quick note, this video is sponsored by life insurance that you can get in as little as 5 minutes via the link down below. It's what Lauren and I have. And remember, you can get one free stock with Webull when you deposit $100. They will give you one free stock worth between $8 and $1,600. It's kind of like you roll the dice. You may as well give it a try. All right, first, let's touch on what happened yesterday. I'm just gonna give you a quick little recap so that way you can see how this integrates together. Yesterday, the Fed said they were concerned that we may face a downward spiral where inflation stays low and basically we get drunk, fat, and happy off debt, which once somebody comes and takes the cheap beer away, AKA the cheap money away, everybody's going to be not drunk, fat, and unhappy, which is not good. This morning, Fed President Barkin of the Bank of Virginia said that the economy needs continued support, and he is also concerned that we're taking on a ton of debt. This also comes at the same time as the US government is also now on track to have a higher percentage of debt to GDP than it had during World War II, or at least a debt level that high, which is the first time we've had such a high level of debt in, well, since World War II. Now, all of these data points aren't too exciting, and the Beige Book doesn't help that much. Let's pull up the Beige Book and take a look. So I'm gonna read some of the highlights here, not all of them. Basically, we saw some consumer spending tick up in August, although everything, including tourism, vehicle sales, consumer spending, everything is far below pre-pandemic levels. Commercial construction was down in pretty much all districts, and even though real estate was a bright spot, we saw higher real estate sales in area, we saw growth and resilience that is in real estate throughout the country, most parts of the country. Overall, in all districts, we continue to see uncertainty and volatility, as well as the pandemic's negative effects on consumerism and business activity. This basically means people are saving more money. People are spending less because we're uncertain. We don't know what's going to happen next. We don't know if there's going to be a big second wave this fall with the flu season. We don't know if there's going to be another big double dip stock market crash. We don't know if when this eviction ban ends December 31st, if we need to be prepared for a foreclosure crisis next year. All of this is creating a lot of fear and uncertainty, and in some regards, it's good. In some regards, I would rather be fearful now than be blindsided later. So in some respects, it's good for us to be aware of what's going on out there. Not everything is rosy. Like when we look at the stock market, it's like, oh yeah, everything's great. When we look at real estate, it's like, oh, everything's great, can't get hurt. We gotta be careful. It's times like this where things are skyrocketing that we do wanna be a little bit more careful. Let's read a few more highlights here because they give us some hints here. Look at this, this was really interesting. Firms continue to experience difficulty finding necessary labor, a matter compounded by daycare availability, aka the lack of daycare availability. Look at this one, as well as uncertainty over the coming school year and jobless benefits. Folks, what are they telling us here? They're telling us that, look, people don't know what to do with their children right now. So rather than put themselves on the job market, in some cases, and quite frankly, possibly a lot of cases, it makes more sense for one person in a household to just say, that's it, I'll just take unemployment, I'll stay at home and try to help homeschool the children. Because right now, it's hard. Lauren's homeschooling our little boys. Well, actually, technically, we're paying for private school, which is crazy because we thought they were going to give us like really easy online virtual learning. And Lauren's spending like 3 to 4 hours a day just trying to teach our 5-year-old how to draw the letter S correctly so we can write, I see a bear. Yeah? Well, I see a bear market. Like, it sucks. And so I get it. Like, it's very, very difficult for people to say, yeah, let me go back to work. Who's going to watch the kids? You can't send your kids to all preschools. They're not all open yet. A lot of them are still shut down, and somebody's got to teach them for their Zoom learnings. And Zoom meetings sounded good in theory, but they're really difficult in practice, okay? At least for schooling. Anyway, continuing on with this report, which keep in mind, that's going to keep hurting us with employment data. This Friday, we're expecting to get another employment data release, and I'm not expecting it to be good. I think it's going to be worse than we're expecting. We'll see. You know, the market never ceases to surprise me, so you never know. But anyway, prices. Input prices are rising faster than selling prices, aka we're not seeing inflation in terms of what companies can sell things for, but we are seeing supply chain issues push prices up. This is why you see food prices go up, because of disrupted supply chains, not because there's somehow more demand and companies can make more money. In fact, the opposite is happening. A lot of districts are reporting that demand is overall weak. There's a lack of pricing power. And overall, we're seeing everything suggest, get ready for lower inflation times, which again, lower inflation time, lower interest rate times. But be careful we don't get too drunk off the punch bowl, so to speak, aka off all this cheap debt. Boston area, housing market was strong, but a lot of firms were permanently laying off people. Lots of layoffs happening right now. And the businesses who want employees, again, are having a hard time finding employees because of the children issue. Real estate doing okay, but New York says the regional economy has stalled in recent weeks. That's from August. From August. New York's district is saying we have stalled. Philadelphia says business activity is flat. Firms continue to face hiring difficulties. Uncertainty is extremely high as contacts await layoffs, evictions, foreclosures, bankruptcies, while the coronavirus continues and stimulus ends. Cleveland, activity remained below pre-pandemic levels. Richmond, auto sales and existing home sales are up. However, the pace of hiring slowed. Same thing, every district so far. Tourism, obviously soft. Mixed economic data. Residential real estate conditions improved. Everything else mixed. Chicago area, and there are 12 regions. Kevin, hello, where's English today? Chicago area, economic activity increased strongly, but the pace slowed and remained below pre-pandemic levels. Let's go on up here to St. Louis. Economic activity has increased modestly. Notice when it's positive, it's modest or slightly or mixed. And when it's negative, it's extremely bad, cautious, right? Some improvements. See, look at this. Some improvements of consumer spending, while many service firms reported declines. So you're seeing a little bit of positive, a lot of negative. But real estate is showing resilience. Again, that was sort of the average throughout the country that we're seeing, that real estate is really just the shining light throughout this entire pandemic. But if you own real estate, be careful that we don't get overconfident in the way that we're investing. And hopefully we're not overtaking too much debt, more than we could bear, more than our incomes would allow us to take on, and potentially getting us a little bit too exposed if there's a future downturn. Dallas, same thing. Housing area was positive. Otherwise, everything else is increasingly uncertain. Disrupted business sentiment. Conditions in the consumer and business services sector remained precarious in the San Francisco area. Precarious. These are bad. Very bad things. Yet at the same time, look, lending activity picked up further. Folks, how do we put the pieces of all of this together? What the heck is happening? What's the theme? The theme is simple here. Job losses continue to happen. Layoffs are becoming permanent jobless claims. And that's why we might see an increase in the unemployment data before we see it go down again. We'll see on Friday, but so far the initial payroll data that we got today on Wednesday was that we're going to have a worse number than we're expecting. And again, a lot of this makes sense because of children driving parents home. It's frustrating. What else is a theme? Low inflation, here to stay. Low rates, probably here to stay. Uncertainty in businesses and households is going to mean, in my opinion, I'm seeing this every day more and more, this will be the frugal decade. We had the roaring 20s 100 years ago, This is going to be the frugal decades. My take. I think everybody's going to try to do whatever they can to save more money. Hopefully that also means invest more without taking on too much more debt. And remember, some inflation is good if you take on debt. Like if we had 2% inflation, 3% inflation, it makes more sense to get a mortgage and take on debt against your stocks, because as inflation happens, it's easier to pay that off because you make more money at your job or selling your goods and services, whereas your debt stays at the same level. Well, unfortunately, when there's no inflation, debt you took out 5 years ago is still kind of worth what it is today. It's nice if you take on $10,000 of debt, you're making 50 grand a year, and then all of a sudden, 5 years later, you're making 70 grand. It's a lot easier to pay off that debt from 5 years ago, right? But we're just not seeing that inflation right now. And remember, this also doesn't apply to like credit card debt, because basically credit card debt destroys you. You don't have an asset that's linked to that. If you own stocks or real estate or businesses, those tend to float up with inflation, whereas your debt stays stable. So that's where inflation is beneficial. But we could really do a whole video on just inflation. Some debt is good when there is some inflation. Just be careful. Right now in this era of cheap money, we could be setting ourselves up for some big risks in the future. So be careful taking on too much debt. And remember, jobs are weak, business demand is weak, and the ability to raise prices at businesses is also weak. So what do we do? What do we do now? Well, should we just go out and YOLO it on Tesla options? Because come on, we all knew it was going to fall, so we could YOLO some put options. And it's probably going to go to the moon again, right? So YOLO some calls. Well, here are my rules. Number one, do whatever you can to minimize speculating, and the one way you could do that very easily is focus on your income first. Figure out what you can do to bump your income. We can't rely on the government. We can't rely on the Fed. We can't rely on the stock market. We have to focus on our income. Let the stocks do what they want. Let real estate do what they want. Put your investment in, try to make educated decisions, but focus on your income and you being able to bring in more money yourself than you spend. And that brings us to number two. Stay lean. In order to make sure you keep bringing in more money than you spend, you got to make sure you're not like up to here in debt, because then things get very difficult when we start drowning in debt. Rule of thumb, I like to keep real estate at no more than 35% debt, 65% equity. So the way that works is you write down on a piece of paper or a spreadsheet, probably ideally a spreadsheet, what the properties are that you own. If you just own one property, write it down, and then write down what your debt is. If you've got more than 90% debt, I don't know, maybe we got to think about getting a better deal next time, or maybe you want to pay that off a little bit, or maybe you don't want to do a cash out refinance and fully max out your equity in your house, right? I like to stay around 35% equity in real estate. Stocks, I do the opposite. I like to stay at about 65% equity or 35% debt. So be careful of that Webull and that Robinhood where they let you go to 100% margin. It's scary. See, today it's so easy to load up on debt. You can literally swipe up on Robinhood, boom, you can unlock 100% debt. Well, it's very easy to get screwed on a double dip recession if you're loaded up that much in debt. It's harder to get screwed if you have less debt or no debt against your stocks. And this is just my warning for everyone. Keep an eye on your debt. When the tides turn, you don't want to be the one out there swimming naked, as they say. Focus on your income, keep investing, and here's a really important one as well. If you missed out on some stock going parabolic, maybe you missed out on Tesla, maybe you missed out on some other stock that's doing the run up, try to remember this. Here's what I do. Don't SOMO. And if you're going to SOMO, write down your SOMO. So SOMO is sadness of having missed out, right? Sadness of missing out. It's kind of like the fear of missing out makes you do irrational things, but then if you don't do it, sometimes then you have SOMO because you're like, I should have done something, right? Write that SOMO on a piece of paper, open up a drawer, drop that paper into the drawer, close the drawer, and never think about it again. You can only make decisions going forward. You can't make decisions going backwards. Don't work that way. So don't let it hold you down or make you feel bad. Focus on going forward and stay frosty out there. As they say in the military, stay frosty. So thanks so much. Get your life insurance in as little as 5 minutes. Get your free stock with Webull. And folks, I will see you next time. Thank you so much for watching.